How did Jesus' parents become a couple? The story of Jesus' birth is oft told, but Mary and Joseph's unconventional courtship can also be found in the history of ancient Palestine. In the New Testament, the Gospels tell the story of Jesus' birth, the first Christmas. Set during the rise of the Roman Empire, the stories create a radiant image of a young couple giving birth to the Son of God in Bethlehem. The Christian world has embraced the faithful story of Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus for centuries. Yet, in those times, even without getting into the plausibility of a virgin birth, their situation would have been considered scandalous. Becoming pregnant out of wedlock was a crime punishable by death. So how did this disreputable situation turn into a cornerstone of Christianity celebrated with tidings of comfort and joy to this day? That's a question that's been asked for 2,000 years. Here's what some biblical scholars claim. The historical documentation for Mary comes from the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, written roughly between AD 70 and 110. Mary, believed to have been quite beautiful, was born to Anne and Joachim in Nazareth. She would have had Middle Eastern features, with dark hair and eyes, and spoken an Aramaic patois. She would have married young, as all girls did at the time, since most people did not live more than a few decades. There is no luxury called adolescence in that world, noted Byron McCain, a historian at Florida Atlantic University. There is no luxury called adolescence in that world. Families arranged these unions, and it is possible that in such a place as Nazareth, which had only a few hundred people, Mary would have known Joseph. In the tradition of ancient Jewish people, Mary and Joseph became betrothed, the first part of a two-stage Jewish wedding ceremony. For the initial part, called the Eruzin, Joseph would give a moher, a dowry, to Mary's family. At that point, he and Mary were legally wed. Yet by tradition, while they were married, the wife continued to live with her parents for about a year after the betrothal. During that time, Mary and Joseph would look forward to a mishuan, a wedding ceremony, after which she would move out of her parents' home. The Annunciation. But following the Eruzin, while she was still living with her parents, Mary became pregnant. There is no hard proof about how this happened, but according to the book of Luke, one of two Gospels that describe the birth of Jesus in the New Testament, the angel Gabriel appeared to the teenager, informing her she had been chosen by God, and he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one. And now, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus." This news confused the young woman, who had no idea how this could be, since she had not had relations with Joseph. According to Luke, Gabriel explained that although she was still a virgin, a transcendent event would occur. "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you," he said, "and the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you." According to the book of Matthew, when Joseph learned of his betrothed's pregnancy, he was not happy. Observing the Bible's commandments and, hoping not to cause Mary any embarrassment, he sought to quietly end the Eruzin. As he thought about how he would do this, he fell asleep. According to the book of Matthew, an angel appeared in his dream, telling him, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit." Matthew 1:20. When Joseph awoke, he understood Mary had been faithful, and they went through with the nishuan, taking his wife into his home. Pregnancy's implications. Angelic vision or not, being pregnant outside marriage could be a dangerous thing. Once you are betrothed, it is considered adultery, said Carol Myers, a professor of religion at Duke University. Despite the biblical edict mandating that when a man commits adultery with his neighbor's wife, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall be put to death, stoning was not always carried out. Even so, Mary's pregnancy would be looked down upon by the community, and it could also visit shame on her family. Nazareth was a small place, and neighbors not only knew each other's business but had long communal memories. There were also important social and familial implications for Mary and Joseph. Theirs was a kinship-based society, and a person's identity was established through the father's line, as laid out in the first chapter of the book of Matthew, which details the male lineage of Jesus' family starting with the patriarch Abraham. They wanted to know that all of those children were of that father, noted McCain. They wanted to know that all of those children were of that father. While Joseph could claim royal descent, the books of Matthew and Mark both refer to him as a carpenter. Yet the Greek word that Mark used is tekton, and its meaning is closer to the Aramaic word nagara, which means a worker or journeyman. Most of Jesus' parables refer to agriculture, so it is likely that Joseph farmed, with carpentry, which he taught Jesus, as a sideline. He might have even done some work at the nearby city of Sepphoris, a spot that the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus called the Jewel of Galilee, which was being rebuilt at the time by Herod Antipas. Tax burden. The ancient Jewish population was obliged to pay taxes to Rome and to King Herod, as well as to tithe of their harvest to the temple. As it was a census year, the expectant couple, according to the books of Matthew and Luke, headed to Bethlehem to pay what had been mandated by Caesar Augustus. The trip would take Mary and Joseph about a week to travel from Nazareth, and they probably made their way south along a route where they could stop at springs to rest and find shelter in small towns. When the couple arrived in Bethlehem, the Gospels tell us that Mary went into labor. They needed a place for her to give birth, yet there was no room for them in the local inn. So they may have taken refuge in a limestone cave used to corral domesticated animals. Some, however, argue they actually stayed with family in a guest room that in a Palestinian home would have been a lower room where animals were kept. Whatever the case, Mary gave birth to Jesus in Bethlehem, an event that would be celebrated for thousands of years to come as Christmas. Travelers to the West Bank often visit Bethlehem's Church of the Nativity, which is believed to mark the site of Jesus' birth. In the 2nd century, Saint Justin Martyr identified the cave where Mary gave birth to Jesus. During the 4th century, Emperor Constantine and his mother had a basilica built there, which Samaritan rebels destroyed in the 6th century. Emperor Justinian rebuilt it soon after. Inside lay the sacred grotto, the spot of the miraculous birth marked by an altar with a 14-point silver star embedded in a marble floor. The site is currently maintained by clergy members of the Roman Catholic, Armenian Apostolic, and Greek Orthodox churches.